This is how I personally organize a draft in my universe mode. I should mention that in this game, there is not yet a feature that is like a draft feature. So there isn't like a cool like 2011, draft that like picks people and, makes it really cool. However, this game does make it easier to see who's on your Raw and SmackDown brand. And what I'm about to show off is that here's your check mark. If you're on the Raw show right now, like you have your participants, you click on it, whoever's check marked is on that show. And whoever isn't check marked is either not on any show or is on a different show. Like for example, let's see. Ashante the Adonis is on SmackDown. He is not checkmarked on Raw. But if I did checkmark him and hit save, then he would be considered on both shows, and I believe it would show that. So I have 90 superstars on each show with a number of 5 matches. So in my case, there's also, these are the championships that I decided to pick. So we got the world title, intercontinental, tag team, women's world, intercontinental, and then the Money in the Bank down there. And then for SmackDown, I have these championships with this Money in the Bank. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 championships on each show. Basically makes it for me to have like 90 participants and stuff. I also have intergender matches turned on. So that is also something that plays a factor into my draft. So my organization that I do in my drafts goes by drafting. I try to go through the entire women's roster and draft them first. So basically what I did was I scrolled through this list. Okay, maybe not this one. Okay, so it's kind of weird. So you have to kind of go into one of your shows and figure this out. So you can look at the organized women's wrestlers by just scrolling down and doing this. And basically, yeah, you can do the check mark thing. What I like to do personally is still use Google Docs to look through this, but it still is so much easier in this game. So basically, I organize it. I draft the women first. I go through with like the entire brand and stuff like that. And I also make note of like, okay, do I want somebody to return at a later date, or do I want somebody like, so for example, I might debut or return like Sonya Deville at a later time, and I would make a note of that, so I would know that. So then I would draft like the women first, and basically 30 to 40 women are on each show, and they take up a good amount of the participants. So I would draft them first, and then I would actually go through tag teams. So tag teams make up a lot of your roster, and you definitely don't need to do as much as I did, but I drafted like 10 tag teams per show. So Bianca Belair and Jade Cargill are separated. That's why the show affiliation is on Raw and SmackDown, because they're on separate brands. But for example, we got American Made on SmackDown. So I kind of go through this list and keep track of the tag teams too. So I kind of got like an even amount of tag teams for Raw and SmackDown. I even got myself the Hardy Boys. So I did draft tag teams first, and obviously separated some wrestlers from certain brands. And that makes up of a lot of superstars if you draft a lot of tag teams. Like most of you realistically will draft maybe, 7 tag teams per show or even less. I drafted like 10 or 11. So I did tag teams then. And then after that, I would see who I have remaining on, this list. And I'd be like, okay, so who else do I want on each roster? And then I would go like 5 at a time. So like Raw, I'd be like, okay, I want Wade Barrett on this show, and then I would go like 4 more people, and then I would go over to SmackDown, and then I'd be like, okay, who is the 5 people that I want on SmackDown? And so that is basically how I did my remaining draft to get such an organized list. And then basically once you kind of have a set up roster, then you don't really have to use the Google Docs anymore, because everything is already so organized. The only problem is that if you want to redraft everybody from scratch, the only problem is that what the game does is it actually resets your championships. But all you'd have to do is give them the titles back, and then it would kind of make the championship history look weird if you care about that sort of thing, kind of like how I do. So yeah, participants and stuff depends on the match size, number of matches and all that, or in championships that you have, and how many matches you would have at like a PLE, which in my case I do one night shows in this universe mode save file, except for this, and it's like 6 matches, each. And so that is basically how I do my draft. I think this is a very short video. Actually, I expected to go through this a lot longer, but it really depends on mostly your personal preference. Unfortunately, there isn't a game that has like the draft feature, or at least there isn't a 2K game that has that draft feature where it kind of can do like a fun little draft thing for you. But you'd have to manually do it yourself, and it's a little bit better to do in this game than previous 2K games. So that makes things a little bit easier. But like I said, I think the main takeaway is the organization of the, like what I said here, drafting the women's roster and, going through them, and then doing the tag teams, which I feel like is also like a way to get like a good chunk of your roster in there. And then I'd go like 5 at a time to go through like your single stars. And that's basically how I do my draft. So with that said, thank you all for watching this video. If you guys want to see how this universe mode is going to work out, make sure to hit that subscribe button and, check out my streams. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.